What the heck is going on here? It just says a C with a dot? What? Channel level settings? Mute? Edit? Live chat replay? Huh. Guess I'm invisible? Hey, Kevin! I don't know why you can't see me, but hopefully you can at least hear me. I have no clue what is going on. I literally just started, and it's just having this odd image. So, YouTube is being weird. But anyway, how are you doing, Kevin? You got any good news? Anything you're looking forward to? That's good that you can hear me. I guess I'll go ahead and say that I have an Ocarina of Time shirt. Has a rip around the belly button area. So I was hoping that maybe the angle of my computer could hide it. But no, it looks like it's hiding everything about me. Uh, YouTube. Ooh, congratulations on having a birthday. I try to make my birthday greeting super unique, so I will say I hope that every single person in this live stream can make you feel super duper special. In fact, would you like me to pin that message so that everyone who comes in here can wish you a happy birthday? And medieval times, I remember going to medieval times on my very first mission trip, and I thought it was a blast, except for the times when I had to eat my food with my fingers. I don't like getting messy, but it was a lot of fun to watch the horses, and especially when they used javelins. I thought that was pretty cool. For the second person that's in here, sorry about the lack of a webcam. I have not a clue what is going on. Oh well, it could be worse. At least you guys can still hear me. Yeah, actually, I think I'll make a new pinned message. Webcam wasn't working on me at the last second, but I'm still here as a voice. There we go. There we go. Yeah, people don't need to know the thing about interrupting, especially if newbies don't even show up. Um, yeah, I've been hoping that some of the people at Comic Con meant it when they said that they wanted to follow my channel, but at the same time, I also said that I don't like pity subscribers. So I said, if you don't like my stuff, then please unsubscribe, because I don't like people to subscribe just because it's me. I want them to subscribe because they like sticking around. Because honestly, I'm not the type of person that's chasing subscribers. I if anything, I'm chasing dedication. So like people that are gonna be around in the long term, and people who are going to say, you know what, Paul, you're genuinely doing a good job. Because who knows? I could have some subscribers that dislike bomb all my stuff, or they subscribed to me long ago because I made one video that they like and I haven't made that video since. What was I saying? Yeah, so at the moment, I'm pretty happy with my subscriber list, and I'm happy with the regulars, and you guys at the live streams are amazing. Thank you, Kevin. I wasn't fishing for compliments, so hopefully that was out of the goodness of your heart. Um, but that does really mean a lot to me. Someone at Comic Con said that to me as well. Um, I don't think she had seen my YouTube channel at that point, but she was like complimenting um, how good I was at starting a conversation at Comic Con, because I don't really do great in group settings. I tend to be a nervous wreck when I'm around like more than 2 people. And Comic Con was really it was a bit of a challenge. Like usually if I was approaching someone one on one, it was nice. But doing anything more than that and I guess like the idea of having to tilt your head in multiple different directions to make sure you're talking to everyone, but not like stare at one person for too long and then make sure that everyone is included. It's a real hassle in a group setting, which is why I think I handle live streams a little bit better because I can talk about different things all at once. Whereas like when you're having a conversation in person, you typically don't have people interjecting with their own stuff and have people having that divided attention. Ooh, the night ceremony. I don't remember if I did that or not. I do remember that our group got a picture with the king of the medieval times, which I still have. And I also remember that the black and white knight was by far the favorite of the girls in our group. All of them were fawning over. Oh, speaking of that mission trip, I don't remember if you. Is my microphone? Oh, there we go. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. Speaking of that mission trip, my next video, which I plan on putting out on Sunday, will be called Rachel's Perspectives on My First Mission Trip. So, my friend Rachel, that was the one that convinced me to go, is going to be talking about her side of the story, which I don't think I've told anyone about that. So, it'll be like a new perspective on something you've heard so many times. Ooh, I didn't even know they had merchandise at medieval times. Like, I knew you could get pictures, but I don't remember anything else. That's cool. Well, I think maybe I wasn't thinking too much about buying stuff there because for me, I've always found the free day on mission trips to be one of the worst parts of the trip. If I were running a mission trip, I'd probably end it with four corners, but from what every other person has told me, they said, Paul, teenagers like to end things with something celebratory and or relaxing. If they were to end on this super high charge spiritual event, that would probably be really fatiguing to them. So you need to give them something lighthearted to wrap it up. That is fair. I think the average teenager would rather end the mission trip with going to a water park than crying in a circle with a bunch of people, but then feeling like you just had the most spiritually rejuvenating time of your life. Maybe I'm just weird. Scratch that. I am weird, and I'm proud of it. I was I was going to meet one of my viewers this past Wednesday, but then she got sick, so we ended up just video chatting, which was great. I think we chatted for like 3 or 4 hours, and it was great. Hopefully, whenever Catholic Creators Conference comes about, we'll be able to have more cool opportunities. So, Kevin, getting back to medieval times, I wanted to ask, was one of the things that you bought at oh, let me address this comment that you just said. Feeling a little down, had to break it off with the woman from International. It turned into a situationship. No point saving up for a situationship if it's not a. So I don't actually know what a situationship is. So you don't have to share if you're not comfortable. But I'm sure you know that I had my fair share of relationship troubles as well. So I feel you there. That's really unfortunate. I know for me, I've told people in the past that there's a verse in the Song of Songs that I feel like not enough people talk about when it comes to like the ideal relationship. And that's that at one point, the groom says to the bride, "My sister, my bride." And that probably sounds odd to the modern audience because you might be thinking, wait, the Bible is promoting incest? But here's how I see it. I think, and maybe this isn't the church's official explanation, but this is just my educated guess. If you're going to take someone as a bride, you need to treat her like you would your sister. And generally speaking, you're not going to be lusting after your sister or using her as an object. You're going to love her merely for her own existence and not because of anything that she has done or will done. And even if you guys don't get along, you still have this like unexplainable love just because it happens to be there. So in that case, I think having that level of deep respect should be a priority with regards to relationships. A situationship is a romantic arrangement that feels like a relationship but lacks a formal title or commitment. Oh, you haven't defined the status or discussed a future together. Oh, yeah, no, um I used to call that half dating because I didn't want to commit to a girl until we established that we were good dating partners because dating is the consideration. Wait a minute. I think I figured out why it's only this icon. I think I forgot to make a profile picture for this live stream. That would explain a lot. I just don't know how to fix that at the moment. Oh well. But yeah, no, I'm a firm believer in the idea that this, I guess this isn't like an official church doctrine. This is just my opinion from just observing how many relationships have failed. I personally think that you should be friends first before you're in a relationship. Because if you don't know how to treat your friends right, how are you going to treat your girlfriend or boyfriend right? And I also feel like some of the best couples that I know personally consider their significant others to be their best friends. And I know certain people in my life who are married and yet they treat me almost as well as they treat their spouses. And I feel like that's why the Catholic Church considers matrimony to be a sacrament of communion is marriage is meant to be kind of like a guideline for how to treat everyone. I don't know if that makes any sense. This is just me guessing. Again, I'm not quoting anything from the catechism or anything like that. Um, hopefully I'm hopefully I'm being sensitive enough for you, Kevin. That does really stink quite a lot. I remember when I was with my ex, there was a point where we called ourselves Huffs, which stood for half ultimate future fiance, where I felt like I really wanted to propose to her, but she was still hurting from her previous relationship. So she said, "Let me get over that hurt before you propose." So for a while, I would only tell select people, like, yeah, we're sort of engaged, but not. And shortly after that was when we broke up because we started to realize that she was not loving me to the degree that a romantic partner should. But I guess, oh shoot, I just realized something else about this webcam problem. You guys can't see my water. Oh, well, I typically only run it for 2 hours anyway, so hopefully that'll just. You can use the clock as a water jug. Oh, hey, if there's anything else that you feel like, I know it's hard when I'm the one talking and you're the one typing, but if you can think of anything else that I can do to support you, I'll do what I can as long as I'm here. And if you feel like talking about it, if you feel like talking about it outside of live stream, feel free to comment. My channel is part ASMR. I actually hate ASMR, believe it or not. I watched it a couple of times, and I think it was like Amaranth, but I wasn't like actively searching for it. This was before I learned that you can mute the recommended videos on Twitch by default. And she was licking the microphone, and I was just like, that is disgusting. I never want to hear that again. So I vowed that I'm just not going to do ASMR on my channel because I feel like, yeah, I've definitely heard the rumors about her. And that's why after I saw that, I was just like, and she does worse things than that? Well, it might not have been Amaranth. I have face blindness. It could have been something else. But yeah, no, I know you're messing with me. I know. I've what was I gonna say? Generally speaking, what draws me to a Twitch channel is if the person feels like the type of person that you can have a casual conversation with while the stream is going, even if it completely disrupts the stream. I've definitely had Twitch streamers where they like will say chatty as one of their tags, and we might like just sit in the same spot in the game they're playing for like an hour just because they're so determined to talk with everyone. And they'll like read all the comments in order so that no one feels left out. And they'll laugh at my jokes, especially because I I tend to not take streams very seriously. If you've ever seen me on Twitch, I would say if you've ever played Danganronpa V3, I am basically like Kokichi Oma. Is you could call me a little gremlin. I like to mess around with people, and I like to state the obvious. Obviously, it depends on who the Twitch streamer is, because like if I've only seen her or him like once or twice, then obviously I wouldn't mess with him or her very much. But the ones that really know me, I tend to try to give him or her a hard time. But it's all part of the charm. That being said, I actually haven't really watched a Twitch stream in quite a while, so hopefully they still get the joke. Either that, or I just happen to be awake at the wrong time. Because I know, one of my favorite streamers was Miss Peggle, and I would watch her at night for me, but it was morning for her because she lives in Australia. And I haven't seen her in like 2 or 3 weeks. So hopefully it's something going on in her personal life and not that just out of the blue she said, Paul, you've been messing with me for 5 years and now was the time that I finally hit the pause button. Like, I'm the type of person that I like people to be straightforward with me. Like, don't hint at stuff, don't give subtext. If there's something you want to say it. And I know people have said to me, like, well, Paul, if I just come out and say what I think, then that's going to hurt your feelings. And my response is, it's going to hurt my feelings if you try to tiptoe around them more than it would if you just said it. So the way that I said it to a friend of mine that seemed to make him feel really good about it was I said, imagine that you're trying to take off a bandage. It's going to hurt no matter what you do, but taking it off slowly is going to hurt more than if you just rip it off. So I said, like, obviously there are certain situations where no matter what you do, you're going to hurt the person's feelings. But you got to think of the lesser of two evils. Think, should I hurt the person's feelings a little bit or hurt them a lot? And the thing about my feelings is I don't generally get offended by that much. But the things that I do get offended by, people tend to not take me seriously, which is weird because, like, they take me seriously on things that they think offend me, but then I say, like, oh, that's nothing. Because for me, what tends to make me the most mad is when people are disloyal. I would say that it's been like almost 10 years since I last like shouted at someone where I was like hollering and spit was flying from my mouth. And it was because that person was making a lot of disloyalty statements. And I don't want to get into all of that because I've since realized that I was in the wrong in that situation. But at the same time, I didn't like this idea of friendships being on a timer. Like in the Catholic Church, it teaches that we are what's called a communion of saints. Or rather, the communion of saints is constantly praying on our intercession. And in fact, that's what the Catechism says is what they are doing the most in heaven. Like, obviously, besides worshiping God, the thing that they're doing the most in heaven is they are praying for us to join them. And people that don't want to have that kind of commitment on earth to be like the communion of saints are the people that drive me crazy the most. Well, I wouldn't say the most, but they're the type of people that I would probably outright lash out at the most. The people that drive me crazy the most are the people that I would say there's a line in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith that describes the type of people that just really get on my nerves. And it's when Obi-Wan says only a Sith deals with absolutes. And I've noticed that, like, the people that tend to be the most wrong in society or journalism or just any kind of prediction about the future are the ones that use extreme phrases like always or never or of all time. And as a result, it ends up with poorly aging stuff. Like, I'm sure there were plenty of people in 1998 that said, like, Ocarina of Time is the greatest video game ever made and it'll never be topped. And it's like, yeah, step aside, Ocarina of Time. You've been dethroned. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are 10 times better than you'll ever be. But yet, it's the highest rated game on Metacritic because they were dealing with extremes. They were thinking there's no precedent for this. So therefore, we're not going to try to think critically about it. We're going to think about our gut impulse of the newness of the game. And that's why I tend to not like using the phrase of all time. I don't tend to say things like, my favorite game at present is Tears of the Kingdom. But I'm willing to admit that one day maybe I won't like Tears of the Kingdom as much anymore. Maybe my opinions on it will change. My opinion on Wind Waker changed. I used to love Wind Waker, and now I really don't like it. And I think I wish Metacritic had an evolving score as opposed to a set in stone score. Because I think if people reviewed Ocarina of Time nowadays, they would probably criticize quite a lot more than they did in 1998. But because even these websites that no longer exist are kept up on Metacritic, it'll always, at the time being, unless Metacritic changes things, it'll still be the highest rated game at present. And honestly, I personally feel like with games journalism, I don't think it'll be possible to surpass a 99. I could be wrong. But it just seems like people have such wildly different expectations that it's really hard to find something that pleases everyone. And I think that's why gaming journalists get such a bad reputation. Is because They see gaming reviews as a job and not as something that's informative to the customer. This is why I never went into sales, because I am just way too darn honest. Like, I'm pretty sure if people had actually watched my Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu review properly, like it got, like probably over 1,000 views, as opposed to I think it might have gotten like over 100. People would have said like, "Oh, back in 2019, Paul was saying what everyone else is saying now about Pokemon." Why? Because I felt like calling out the absurdity of that type of game design and being absolutely mesmerized that even nowadays Game Freak has hardly done anything to fix it. But again, only a Sith deals in absolutes. So I don't want to sit here and say, "Oh, Game Freak will never improve and Game Freak will never add voice acting to their games." We know they've done it in some of the spin-offs like Detective Pikachu Returns. I just think they're trying to please the hardcore fans and not doing a very good job of appealing to those of us who did not get into it when it was new. And so nowadays, like when Pokemon came out, it was on the Game Boy. And obviously there's only so much you can do on a Game Boy. And people back then knew that if they're going to play a Game Boy game, their their imagination was going to do most of the graphical powerhousing. Nowadays, Game Freak still pretends like it's on a Game Boy. Those of us who didn't grow up with it on the Game Boy are like, "It's not 1996 anymore. What are you doing? Like, can't you make this game up to modern standards?" And the fact of the matter is, they're not trying to please us. They're trying to please the nostalgia junkies because they know that those people, if you served them a game called Pokemon Poop and Pee, they would still buy that because it's Pokemon. Even if you had a literal turd as a Pokemon and the graphics were like pixelated, they'd say, "Well, it's Pokemon, so I'm going to buy it anyway." And I wish I was exaggerating, but honestly, honestly, I've met way too many people who kind of prove me correct, and I wish I was wrong. If someone wants to correct me in the comments, then please do. But uh, there's a reason why Pokemon games are usually the highest selling on their respective platforms. So the next question I wanted to ask you guys is, what would you say is a dream announcement that you would love to hear from anyone and anything? It could be a video game announcement. Like you could say, "Hey, Paul, I really want this kind of video game to be announced." Or it could be something like, "Hey, they're going to make, I don't know, they're going to take the Harry Potter full cast audiobooks and like add images to them so that people can see what is going on." It could even be, "Hey, look, now we have a dating app that's actually good." Like anything, literally anything you want. That's what I'm curious about. For me, I think the announcement that would make me the most happy would be if there was an announcement that Catholic Heart Work Camp had a local alternative. That way, I'd be able to not have to worry about taking a super long commute to my old parish and then taking another super long commute to go to where Catholic Heart Work Camp is. Rather, if there was, say, one that was like, I don't know, a couple of blocks away, and then I signed up for it, and there were enough kids to where I could like actually be a chaperone, and then I could just like walk there. That would be my dream. I do want to be the world's longest running YouTuber, but that's not an announcement. That's more of wishful thinking. Um, as far as video game announcements, I actually heard something really cool today. And that's that there's this game coming out called Fraymakers. And it's basically it's Super Smash Brothers but for indie characters, which I thought is such a cool concept because I think Smash Brothers doesn't have a whole lot of indie representation. So it's nice to see people like the girl from Hat in Time and the guy from Spelunky and Bit Trip or Captain Video from Bit Trip Runner. And apparently it is eventually going to be on the Switch and Switch 2. So I would love it if I could give that a try. Cuz I don't know, I may not like most indie games, but the indie games that I do like, I really like. There's a reason why Arzette, the Jewel of Faramore, was my number 2 game of 2024. It did such a good job of trying to replicate the source material without belittling it. In fact, I'm pretty sure that thanks to Arzette, the Jewel of Faramore, assuming enough people have heard about it, that it's going to make revisionist history. It's going to make people look at the CDI Zelda games and they're going to say, you know what? What if those Zelda games are actually good? And that's just such a mind-blowing thought because I don't think anyone would have dared to consider that prior to Arzette. I know I certainly didn't think that. Did I just lose my audio? Oh well. Oh well, it happens. Yeah. Yeah, I think I did. Oh well. I was also thinking about what would be the worst possible outcome of like something that would completely destroy me. I think the thing that would just make me the most devastated in my life would be if I were to find out that there was nothing I could do to support my friends and family. If I just got to the point where my friends and family just said something along the lines of, you know what, Paul? Like, it's great that you want to help us and you're always asking, what can you do? But you know what? We've got our spouses and we've got our friend circles and we just don't need you anymore. That to me would be like I would say a nightmare come true. And that's why I really appreciate my friends and family is that they try their best to make me feel included. And I think based on what I've seen, I do have some of the best friends and family in the world. And I feel like the Bible verse that really comes to mind when it comes to friendship is a faithful friend is a sturdy shelter. Whoever has found one has found a treasure. And at first I thought that that was kind of abstract. Like, we don't think about treasure nowadays. We think about like cash and debit and credit and all that stuff. But then I started to think, A treasure is typically something that you keep because you have priceless memories associated with it. And if you were to sell it, you would only do it out of desperation. But hopefully, that never comes to pass in most friendships. I think there's a reason why the Bible puts so much emphasis on friendships over marriage. Not saying the Bible discourages marriage. I mean, the very first commandment in the Old Testament was go and have sex. But I think there are more verses that talk about the joys of friendship than there are the joys of marriage. I'm pretty sure there's a verse where St. Paul says, I wish that more people would be single as I am. But then there are other passages that say stuff like, a faithful friend is a sturdy shelter. Whoever has found one has found a treasure. Jesus says, the greatest love, get this, John 15:13. This is my favorite Bible verse. John 15:13 says, no man has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Not for their spouses, not for their kids, for their friends. Why? Because friendship doesn't try to condense itself to a singularity, like, say, a romantic relationship would. Because Jesus didn't commit to one single person in his life, he was able to commit to everyone equally. Now, we don't have that luxury, unfortunately, while we're on earth. Well, I guess through the powers of prayers we could. But there was one time I was talking to a friend of mine, and I think that friend had gotten married. And I said, I'm sure deep in the back of your mind, there's a part of you that worries that you might get divorced one of these days, because when you live with someone all the time, you start to see the worst in them. But if you're friends with someone, that typically tends to be a lot more unbreakable. And I think that's what God wants from all of us, is he wants this idea of perfect commitment for its own sake, not because of any kind of merit, but simply because it exists. That's why in Greek, there's different definitions of love. And the highest form of love is called agape love, which means unconditional, which is the type of love that God has for us. But I don't think most of humanity tries that hard to have agape love in their life. They try really hard to love people that love them. And Jesus talked about that. He said, even the tax collectors love those who love them. But I call you to love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. That's what it means to truly lay down one's life for one's friends, is you make your enemies your friends. And I think that might be one of the hardest teachings in the Bible, if I'm being honest. Because if you guys knew what me and my family were going through, I don't think the first thing that would come to your mind is, Paul, you should be praying for those people. You should be loving those people. They're your enemies, and Jesus said to pray for them. I think deep down inside, I don't think we would want anything to do with those people if we ever get out of our situation. But yet, if we don't pray for them, we're not doing what Jesus asked. Because Jesus, when he was on the cross, he even died for the most wretched sinners in hell. And they chose to say no. And that's what I think is the saddest part of Jesus' crucifixion. And that's why I think so many Catholic churches, because, like in Protestant churches, you'll often see just an empty cross. But in the Catholic Church, you see Jesus on the cross. I think there's a reason why Jesus looks so sad on the crucifix. And it's not just because he's in torment. It's because he knows that there are some people that aren't going to appreciate the gravity of all that he goes through. They're going to say that he doesn't even exist. He's just a figment of the author's imagination, instead of the person who not only taught us how to love, but he showed us how to love by giving of himself, even though he knew that we were wretched and did not deserve his love. And I think that's why there's so much emphasis on friendship in the Bible. Because you're less likely to lose a friend than you are to lose a spouse. There's a reason why people report on just like the growing number of divorce rates, but you don't hear about the growing number of friendship breakups. Like, obviously, they still exist, but like, you don't really see a whole lot of statistics about it. And the reason why I went on that tangent is because somehow I got to talking about what would be the thing that annoys me and drives me crazy the most. And I said it was disloyal people. Because Jesus was the exact opposite of disloyal. Even though he knows that I had a really, really messed up past. I was really sexist. I was really rude and insensitive when I was a teenager. I didn't think about what was coming out of my mouth before I said it. I was the type of person that if something was on my mind, I vomited it out. Like, oh, hey, a new game came out. Even though you're 78 years old and never picked up a controller in your life, I'm going to talk about it. Sure, that's more childlike innocence than actively being like rude and stubborn, but I had my moments. And yet, Jesus still decided to be loyal to me anyway. That's powerful stuff. Because so many people, when I was on a dating site on Facebook, admittedly, I wasn't trying very hard. But when I was on a dating site on Facebook, which was supposedly Catholic, mind you, I would maybe have like one or two conversations with a girl that was interested in me. And then she'd say, I don't think we're compatible, so I never want to talk to you again. Imagine if Jesus did that on the cross. Wouldn't that just be the most terrible, awful thing? And that is why I think I take it so personally when people are disloyal. Jesus was loyal to the people that don't even believe he exists. He was even loyal to people like Adolf Hitler. He was loyal to me at the time of my life when I didn't feel like anyone was loyal to me in return. And maybe it's presumptuous of me to wish that people would be more like Jesus. But honestly, I don't foresee a future where Jesus doesn't exist in my life. Even if hypothetically, Jesus is just a person that someone imagined, he's a good ideal to aspire to. Like, I know a couple of people who are either agnostic or atheist who don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God, but they'll still follow his commandments because they say that, you know what? He has some words of wisdom that would be great to follow. I gotta see if this chat is broken. Either that or people are just lurking, because goodness knows if I've been talking to myself this whole time. Oh, that'll be sad. In my opinion, I think that my relationship with Jesus took a while for it to fully form. I remember being in high school when I first learned that Jesus' love was not only universal, but it was also individualistic at the same time, which is befitting from someone who's omnipotent. The fact that he could show such intense love for the entire world, and yet at the same time, he was thinking about each one of us as though we were the only person on earth. And from what I've heard from people that have had near death experiences, Jesus has the ability to bilocate in heaven because he's eternally present with everyone with equal amounts of love and support, even if they don't deserve it. So Jesus' love is just as intense to someone who is Catholic from the moment they learned about Catholicism as to like the worst of sinners. And how often do our friendships not even come close to that? And that's what I would say is what hurts my feelings more than anything else. Just this idea of, oh, well, you're ugly, so I don't want to be friends with you. Or they might say, like, well, I'm lesbian, you're a guy, so I can't hang out with you. Like, I get that there's a time and a place for boundaries, but to not even give people a chance because of something they can't even help, that just boggles the mind. Things like people being like racist or bigoted is just so sad. I would love it if we would live in a world where people were able to, I don't know how to word it, but when I was at Comic-Con this past Friday, I remember being really amazed by 4 individuals, all 4 of which I have pictures of, so I still remember what they look like, even for someone like me who has face blindness. Is my pinned message gone? What the heck happened? Maybe that's why no one's here. But anyway, yeah, there were 4 people at Comic-Con that were just insanely friendly. You'd think that we had been friends for years. But what was it that I was doing that made them so friendly? We were strangers. Literally, all I did for some of them is I walked up behind them and I said, "Hey, I love your costume. Can we get a picture together?" How many people will give you that kind of support just by existing? It made me feel almost as though Comic-Con was like a like a demo of heaven. Like, you know how there's demos on the Nintendo eShop where like they give you a chance to try out things, but you know it's not the full experience. That's what I felt like Comic-Con was like with those 4 people. All I did was simply ask for a picture. And they said things like, "Oh my gosh, Paul, you're making my day." Man, if they're able to, or I should not say able, if they decide to trust in God's mercy and end up in heaven, that is going to be one heck of a happy reunion. Honestly, I can think of so many people that I would love to see in heaven. Like, obviously, I would want all of humanity to be in heaven. Like, that's a given. But I think the people that would amaze me the most to see in heaven, like, obviously, like, I would be amazed if anyone is in heaven, obviously. But what I mean by amazement is, I guess, shock or surprise would be the better word. The people that made such a difference in my life but have moved on, those are the people that would really surprise me. Because losing a friendship, that has honestly been some of the hardest pain I've ever been through. But having them back is some of the greatest joy I've ever been through. I remember when I did the best memories of 2025 video on my channel, and I talked about how Ashley and I became friends again. Honestly, that was one of the happiest moments in my entire life. At the moment when we exchanged that Facebook set of messages where we said, where one person said, "I'm sorry," and the other said, "I forgive you." That was one of the happiest moments of my life because in that moment, I completely forgot about all the animosity that we had. And I just said, "You're back. We're back. It's all back to normal. It's great." Speaking of back, John Paul, welcome in. So glad you could join us. I don't know what the heck happened with my webcam. I think it's because I forgot to put up a profile picture. But hopefully you can still hear me at the very least. I hope you will watch the replay of this, John Paul, because for like, I don't know, maybe almost an hour, I was talking about my perspectives on friendship and why I think there's a reason why there's more talk in the Bible about friendship than there is about marriage. And just how, in my opinion, Comic-Con that I just went to was kind of like a mini heaven. Oh, I loved it so much. The people there were so friendly. It was almost like being back on mission trip, if I'm being honest. Oh, thank you, John Paul. You know what? You are the only person that I've ever met on my various mission trips that outright said, "Hey, Paul, I think I'm going to follow you." And then you kept your commitment. Like, obviously, there are a handful of people I still talk to from like my first mission trip and my second one. But that's about it. And then you came along and you were like, "Oh my gosh, Paul, you have a YouTube channel? I'm going to follow it." And then you did. It was so amazing to see that level of commitment. It makes me think that that alone is probably going to save you quite a lot of time from purgatory. Is I think God will say that level of commitment and loyalty that's equivalent of that of Jesus on the cross is what is going to end up reducing the amount of time you have to suffer in the afterlife. Is that true? I don't know, but I'll pray for it if it doesn't end up being true. I will pray that because you kept your word, that will speed up the process of you and me being able to have an eternal party in heaven. Oh my gosh, can you imagine what it would be like if every single person in Catholic heart history was in heaven together? Will, like, you wonder how the conversations would even start. Oh, silly me. I completely forgot to ask. How are you, JP? Anything cool happening in your life? Any good news? Anything like that? I was so busy. I was so busy being excited. I completely forgot to ask. But that's been something I've been thinking about. Like, I remember when Facebook notes were a thing. I remember I wrote a note called My First Day in Heaven, and it was me guessing what it would be like. And I remember some of the people I talked about the most in that Facebook note. And this was like back when I was like on my first 2 mission trips. So this was way before I was miraculously healed. So don't feel bad if I didn't include you because I didn't know you back then. But I was listing a whole bunch of mission trip people, if I'm being honest. And I was saying in that note, obviously I don't have it anymore because Facebook notes are kaput, but I'm pretty sure I said something along the lines of like, none of us remembered any of the grievances we had. Or like, we didn't mention things like, oh, it's been so long. Instead, we mentioned, we're back. And we didn't keep track of the sorrowful moments on the mission trip. We kept track of the rejoicing. We kept track of the moments when we were victorious. Four Corners? Now, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what happened after Four Corners, where I decided I was going to be a new man from that day forward. I declared it to, I think, 3 girls that were behind me in reconciliation. And that is what I think is going to be our first conversation in heaven. Is they're going to say, would you look at that? You stopped being, or no, they're not going to say that. They're going to say, look at that. We're all friends now. You're friends with a whole bunch of girls. That is so great. They're not going to mention how I used to be sexist and how I used to be an absolute jerk when I was in high school. They're not going to mention the time that I was so mischievous that I won't say it. That might be a bit, that might be a bit too much information. But I was definitely no angel when I was in high school. But that's what I think is what makes heaven cool, is people don't keep track of your mistakes. They keep track of your victories. And that's why I think a mission trip reunion would be, in my opinion, excuse me for a minute. I should probably get this. It might be super important. I'm going to pause the stream real quick, guys, because this person strikes me as the type of person that probably wouldn't text me if it wasn't super duper necessary. So I don't think anyone is here. So you can't see me anyway. So just I'll be back very, very shortly. All right, so I am back, and I guess it wasn't super important. It's just I didn't realize that the last message I had sent to one of my friends was how do I word this? I didn't think it warranted a response. I thought it was just me just stating stuff, and that would be the end of the conversation. And she decided to respond, which is nice. So after this live stream, I will probably thank her for making my day. Yes, I think heaven will be peaceful in a manner of speaking. But from what I've heard, peace in the sense of what we see as peace on earth, absolutely not. In heaven, there's no such thing as fatigue. And when we think of peace, we think of like a good nap, or we think of like being by calm waters. Heaven is anything but calm. It's going to be a whole bunch of rejoicing, a whole bunch of loud music. And I know for someone like me, that sounds like torture because I have like 0 -5 hearing, which is like basically perfect. But in heaven, we won't have all of that stuff like stuff being, quote, too loud or like multiple music at once sounding jarring. It's going to be a lot of rejoicing. It's going to be a lot of celebrating. I know if hypothetically every single mission trip person in existence, even that person that turned out to be a pedophile, if all of them end up in heaven, oh, goodness knows I'm not going to be quiet. I'm probably going to jump into them like a mosh pit and just be like, oh my goodness, we did it. We managed to keep every single person here a practicing Catholic. And like I said, I don't know if you were here, JP, when I said this, but when Ashley and I reunited, the first thing that popped into my head was, it is so good to have you back. It wasn't, oh, it's about time we reconciled. It was the moment that was exciting. It was that realization that we were starting a new moment and hopefully an eternal moment. And that's how I see heaven as. It's a place where you just stop thinking about your regrets and stop being living in the past, and you just think about the now. Cuz the past, that's what purgatory is for. But once you're in heaven, the only past that matters is perfecting what you learned for all of eternity. It makes me think. I've heard Padre Pio say in some of his writings that heaven is really not that different from earth. It's more like just a veil, and then we just lift up the veil when we die. So, for all we know, heaven could be the Bishop Lane Retreat Center that I went to on my first mission trip, but like a better one. Maybe like instead of that dull gray carpet that we had when I was there, the carpet will be like multiple colors and it'll like be expanded. For all we know, maybe like that beautiful tree that I saw on my first mission trip will have more leaves. Maybe when we're in heaven, we can like visit every single place we've ever been to, but like get to see like a director's cut. Kind of like how you look at something like Final Fantasy VII Remake and you wonder how could people have ever put up with that polygonal blocky original, because this remake looks so much more beautiful and it has so much more voice acting, and the music is orchestral, or at least most of it. That's how I think heaven will be. Is it'll be like Final Fantasy VII Remake, where we're just like, how the heck did we put up with the sorry state Earth was in when we have all of this majesty, all of this glory? But if I'm being honest, I do think that there are moments when you literally took the words out of my mouth. Not in those exact words, but that was just what I was going to say, JP. Yes, I do genuinely believe that there are moments when we are technically joined with the communion of saints. We just don't realize it because we are sensual, not sexual, sensual beings. That's why every single sacrament has some element of the senses to it, like anointing with the sick, you put oil on the person, communion, you eat something. It's to remind people that the invisible reality is taking place, but we need some form of knowing that it's there. But I'm pretty sure there's a verse in the Catechism that says that when we receive Holy Communion, we are temporarily transported not only to Calvary, but within the communion of saints. In that moment, heaven and earth are intermingled in ways that just aren't possible anywhere else. But obviously, we can't see that reality. But just imagine if we could. Like, don't you think Holy Communion would be so much more reverent? Like, to me, when I go to Holy Communion, I always see it as this like really somber like moment to just reflect on this idea that God is within us. But there's a reason why it's called Holy Communion and not just Holy Jesus. Because even though the Eucharist is Jesus, it's called Holy Communion because we are a communion of saints. And I'm pretty sure I had a friend of mine who used that exact metaphor as a way that I would never be too sad that I was losing her. And I don't mean losing her as in like what happened between me and Ashley. I mean that she felt called to go into the convent, and that meant that she had to say goodbye to most of her friends and family, especially her guy friends. And I took that really hard. But then she said something that I'll never forget. She said, Paul, whenever you go to the Eucharist, think of who it is that the Eucharist is in relation to me. And then you and I will always be connected literally and emotionally. Because she said, while I'm discerning, you're meeting my boyfriend. While I'm in the process of going through my vows, you're meeting my fiance. And after I've made my final vows, you'll meet my husband. Admittedly, I don't think about her all the time because goodness knows I have so many friends that haven't taken those extremes. But it makes me think, like, what if she's been thinking about me like that this whole time and I just don't know about it because she hasn't reached out to me since then? It makes me think maybe I should be thinking about her more. Maybe I should be thinking about, like, yeah, if we are transported to the communion of saints and we ourselves are a communion through the body of Jesus, then technically we've never actually left. Oh, I almost choked up saying that, honestly. That's why I always loved going to mass at Catholic Heart Work Camp. To me, the Eucharist was a transformative moment at Catholic Heart. Like, obviously, I was miraculously healed at my most recent CHWC. But even at my first one, I remember I was super asexual and super sexist on my very first mission trip. I think you'd be disgusted to be around me back then. Well, maybe you wouldn't because you're a guy, but I know most girls probably were. But after I received communion, that very first mass that we did, or it was the second one of the two, it was either on Monday or Sunday. For the first time in my life, it was as though I was properly seeing women for the first time ever. And I said, oh my gosh, God really did a gorgeous job. And it wasn't like a lustful manner of looking. It was more just like, why did I not realize the majesty of the human body before now? And then the year after that, I read Theology of the Body, and it just seemed like every other year I kept getting into a deeper appreciation of what God was trying to get at in the Garden of Eden and how much prudish culture has tried to destroy that. And so ever since then, I guess like in the back of my mind, I've thought about Holy Communion as a way of elevating the senses so that they're ever so closer to viewing reality the way that the saints in heaven do. Because the things that I have seen and felt in Holy Communion are mind blowing. Like, I remember when I was doing my my best memories of 2022, my memory of the year ended up being just some random Sunday when I received Holy Communion. But in that moment, I felt this passionate, overwhelming amount of love, the likes of which I have never experienced before or since. Not even at Comic Con, not even on mission trip, not even with my departed grandpa. And I asked the Lord, what is this that I am feeling? And he said, this is what it feels like to be loved by the entire communion of saints. And I said, this is just the communion of saints? This isn't even you? Like, this is almost like overwhelming in my senses. I wish I could describe what I felt back then. But I would say that in general, Holy Communion fills me with this sense of peace, for lack of a better word. Just every single anxiety, every single worry is just gone in that moment. Even if I've been panicking about something through all of Mass, that one moment is when I just stop. And all I'm doing is just thinking about good things. Hello, Noah. So glad you could even just come say hi. You know what? That is great. Yes, it is. Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith. Honestly, the Eucharist is the main reason why I'm Catholic. If it weren't for the Eucharist, well, for one, I wouldn't have been healed of. You can't see my fingers, but I'm doing counts. I've been healed of lactose intolerance. I've been healed of this horrible sickness that made me have to leave the pew and throw up. I was healed of back and shoulder injuries. And then I think there was one more healing that I had. Well, obviously, you just heard what I said to JP. The Eucharist has literally allowed me to relive some of the greatest moments in the Bible. All because of two simple words, and that was, I believe. In those moments when I received the Eucharist, I was 100% convinced that this was the body and blood of Christ. And every time atheists or agnostics try to challenge that view, I usually say, can you explain how kissing a napkin can heal someone? Can you explain how chewing on a wafer can rid someone of lactose intolerance? You can't. Obviously, there are people out there that experience being in a state of psychosomaticness, for lack of a better word. If any of you can think of what I was supposed to say, please put it in the comments. But I don't think that was it. If I was hypothetically psychosomatic and it was just all in my imagination that I got over lactose intolerance, it would probably be a lot shorter of a process. Hello, Ronnie. Glad you could make it in. Off the top of my head, I don't know your name. So, would you care to tell me how you know about me? I am so sorry for the lack of a webcam. This literally happened like right when I started stream. So, hopefully, if you want to know what I look like, there's plenty of videos where I show my face. This is just the one video where YouTube decided to be silly. Also, just curious, what does VMP stand for, if you don't mind me asking? If that's a personal question, you don't have to answer it. But usually what I like to do when newcomers come in is one, everyone here is going to be super nice. So uh, like if you want to start a conversation with people, like I'm sure they love it. I also want to hear, like, do you have any good news? Do you have anything you're looking forward to? Like, If you have something joyous, I want to hear it. But even if something's bothering you, hopefully I can turn it into joy. Your initials. Okay. Very nice. Very nice. I'm guessing you just want me to call you Ronnie for the time being, or do you have another nickname? You came from my Mario shirt unboxing. I had a Mario shirt unboxing? I tend to the videos I tend to forget the most are the unboxing ones, because in my opinion, I don't really like looking at unboxings. The only reason I did it was because people wanted me to, but I'm thinking going forward, I'm definitely gonna be way more limited in those. Ronnie is good? Okay, okay, very nice. The sacraments are the main reason you're Catholic, but followed by the lineage of the papacy. Honestly, I couldn't have said it better myself, JP. That is a very good. Um, what was I gonna say? It was sent from one of my viewers. Okay, okay, that's neat. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. It's the Mario Kart shirt. Okay, yeah, now I know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, I have been encouraging people to go to those unboxings and not the one that was deleted, because that way I won't get ravenous attention. But just curious, have you been like a long time viewer, or did you decide that you were gonna watch the channel unboxing because the other unboxing no longer exists? If it was the latter, then I am super proud of you, because I don't want people to think that I don't want to thank God for things. I just want the responses to be reasonable. You just played Mario Kart Wii for the first time in years. Very nice, John Paul. You just found it 10. Okay. Well, you know what? That really makes my day. That's great. Glad to hear it. Um, you know what? You are actually the very first person that has ever said that to me. Literally, like, everyone else I know will be like raging and storming against me for privating the video. Or they'll say like, "Oh no, Paul, you can't be downplaying the importance of thanking God for it." So I really thank you, Ronnie, for coming in and being like, "Well, I'm just going to watch another unboxing so that I can have the same general feel, but just with something different." Oh my gosh, you made my day. Thank you. You're Catholic too? Very, very nice. That's great to hear. What's one of your favorite parts of being Catholic? Also, I'm curious, since you're new here, I guess I have two questions for you, and if they're too personal, you don't have to answer them. One, um, do you like video games or TV shows or books or anything like that? Two, did we happen to meet at Comic Con? Because for some reason, the name Ronnie, there are two things that pop into my head when I think about that. I know that there is an actress called Ronnie Edwards, and she was who played Ike Godsey's wife in the Waltons, but I'm pretty sure she's passed away. So I don't think you're that Ronnie. But I'm pretty sure I met someone at Comic Con named Ronnie. It could just be a coincidence, but that'd be cool if you were able to come back from that. But yeah, JP, getting back to your comment, I also played Mario Kart Wii for the first time in years back in, I think it was like 2023. And I remember not liking it as much as I used to, but at the same time, one thing I cannot deny, Mario Kart Wii, in my opinion, has some really good course design. And the booster course pass, in my opinion, kind of ruined it. Like there were some courses that I would much rather play it on the Wii than on the Switch. Like Koopa Cape was just absolutely butchered. Like I missed the electric bars that zoomed all around, and I missed the there was something else I missed. I missed the Mii's all over Coconut Mall. I even missed the glider section. Or did they keep in the glider section in Mario Kart 8? Because I'm pretty sure in Mario Kart 7 they had a glider section in Coconut Mall. But I don't remember if they kept that from Mario Kart 8. Well, either way, Coconut Mall was really good on the Wii. Mario Kart 7, it was pretty good. It just felt a bit condensed. And then Mario Kart 8 was kind of ugly. Like it looked like they just put like a Vaseline filter out over all of it and called it a day. What was I going to say? For those of you that are new here, I just want to give you a heads up that I get very easily distracted, but that is a good thing for you guys because it means that you can interrupt and say whatever you want anytime, and hopefully it means that I can get to your comment faster. First time you played 8, you did Koopa Cape. The first time you ever played 8? That is a terrible first. Not saying you did terrible. I'm saying, like, of all the courses you could play first, that is a terrible one to do. In my opinion, I think the best courses to play in Mario Kart 8 first are the ones that were in the base version of Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U, like before they did DLC. Like things like Twisted Mansion and Shy Guy Falls, like the ones that really play around with gravity. Those are the ones that I think should be like the Mario Kart 8 experience. The Booster Course Pass doesn't really do anything crazy with gravity, but at the same time, they were just a nice little bonus. And what's the word? I really liked the Booster Course Pass. I think that it was a great way of adding more content to a game that we didn't think we'd get any more content to. Oh, okay. Thanks for the explanation, Ronnie. Glad you can make it, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed watching a stream that doesn't have video. All right, you have a great rest of your day. Alrighty. Well, that's nice that we got a new viewer in here. But yeah, JP, before I forget, something I wanted to tell you is that I got a chance to go to Comic-Con and I made a video about it. But what was really cool about Comic-Con was that there were some really, really friendly people there. And a couple of them said that they wanted to follow this channel. Now, admittedly, I might have jinxed it a bit because I don't like pity subs, as you know. If people are going to subscribe to me, I want them to actually like the stuff and then click unsubscribe if they don't. Because you'd be surprised how many people I would say, like, hey, I have a YouTube channel. And before I can say any more, they're just like, oh, I just hit the subscribe button. I'm like, you haven't even watched any videos. They're like, well, it's you, Paul. I'm just going to subscribe because I like you. And I'm like, don't subscribe because you like me. Subscribe because you like the videos. So I literally said to a couple of people, like, if you don't like my videos, click the unsubscribe button. So maybe I jinxed it. But you know what I have learned? I used to be the type of person, actually, this was just a couple of months ago that I used to be this type of person. I used to get really caught up in regrets. I was that guy that, like, something happened in the past, no matter how small it was, and I would be just caught in it as though it was like a phantom that was haunting me. And I have since learned to give myself a different type of haunting. Instead of being haunted by regrets, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that 13 years ago, instead, create time capsules of what people said to you that was good and pretend as though the bad never happened, which I personally believe is what heaven's going to be like. Again, I have no way of proving it. There's nothing in the catechism that says that. This is just my sheer educated guess. In heaven, these time capsules are going to become a permanent part of our life there. Obviously, they might be perfected in case it was, like, say, a sinful time capsule. But, like, for example, I still remember the faces of every single person that really got along with me at Comic Con. And even if they end up not following my YouTube channel, then what I can create in my mind is at one point in time, we really got along. And they really said, "Oh my gosh, Paul, you're a sweetheart, and I really want to follow your channel." And no matter what, even if they hate my guts now, maybe in a video I said something that offended them, but at one point it happened. At one point we got a picture together. I won't say who, just in case they don't want to be identified. I would be able to point out the pictures, but I won't. But at one point, they said, "I want to follow your channel." And I remember for one of them, I said, "Hey, if the Catholic stuff bothers you, I've got plenty of variety." And she seemed to laugh it off. And that's how I think about past mission trips too, is of all the people I've ever met on all the Catholic carts I've been to, which I've been on 8 of them, by the way, there are only 3 people that I still regularly talk to, you included. But yet, if we use this time capsule mentality of at one point we were all united in the same thing, and we all changed each other's lives, and we were all saying these platitudes about each other, more so them to me, but I had my fair share of people that I was thanking for their existence. That is eternal. Well, obviously, if I get dementia, I might forget about it, but God won't. That's what I'm the most excited about, if in heaven, if I'm being honest, besides meeting Jesus, of course, is being able to have some kind of museum of those time capsules. Because I don't know if I've told you this specifically, JP. I've definitely mentioned it, but I don't know if you were there when I did. I'm hoping to become the patron saint of loyalty. And if I don't, then I'll just humbly accept that. I don't know. Maybe it was a stupid dream to want. But I'm really hoping that for me, if I get nothing else in heaven, if hypothetically I get the lowest circle of heaven, that at the very least, God will give me a house that are full of like the vials and half-blood prints that, like Dumbledore pours them into the Pensieve and they get memories. And all they are is just reliving Catholic Heart Work Camp and NCYC and all those conferences I went to. And heaven is just absolutely nothing except those happy moments. If the catechism ends up being a lie, and if Catholicism hypothetically were to be, I'm literally crying as I'm saying this, and I think this might be the first time I've ever cried on stream. If that's all heaven is just reliving your memories nonstop, then my entire life will be worth it. If I die tomorrow and God says, "What kind of idiot are you for believing in the Eucharist?" No. Heaven doesn't exist. Your entire religion is a bunch of baloney. I will still say, "Well, you know what, God? I don't care." Because I lived with hope and I lived with optimism. And so I would like to think that even if hypothetically Jesus' sacrifice on the cross was meaningless and we all are destined to be in hell, I don't care. Well, I care for everyone else, but I don't care for me. Because I think deep down inside, if I were hypothetically to be in hell, I think what would give me the slightest amount of relief is knowing that there were people on this earth that got closer to God because God was willing to use someone so wretched in high school to be his mouthpiece. Because that was typically what I would hear the most at mission trip is, Paul, when you opened your mouth, it felt like it was God talking through your mouth. Honestly, someone wrote that in one of my notebooks so that I can always remember it. So even if I do get dementia, I can just read that passage in the notebook. Even though that person hasn't spoken to me in years, that person probably doesn't even remember that I exist. That notebook page will still exist. And even if my notebook fades away, that memory won't fade away. And that's what makes me so happy about being a Catholic is we are living in a perpetual state of time capsules. To us, the past, the present, and the future all coalesce into one consistent moment. In fact, that's what Catholic theology teaches, that God is. That's why he calls himself I am, is because to him, the Garden of Eden and Catholic Heart Work Camp and his passion and the second coming, they're all continuously happening in his mind. And God is hoping that when we get to heaven and are purified of our human imperfections, that we can think the same way that he thinks. Maybe not like totally to his extent, but I think deep down inside, he wants to teach us how to be omnipotent as well, because he knows that heaven has to be perfect. And he wants us to be rejoicing in that which is good. Because if he didn't, let's say hypothetically, he didn't want us to be doing that, what would be the point of being on earth? Why wouldn't God just like snap us into heaven without us having to go through earth? For that matter, why would he make earth beautiful? He clearly wanted us to learn something from our experiences on earth. And if my life is any indication, I think he wanted us to learn from the smallest of fleeting moments. And for some people, those fleeting moments are going to change. Like maybe all those times that I felt the breeze blowing across my face on a summer afternoon, and that breeze just made me feel so relieved because I'm not a summer person. I'm a winter person through and through. I mean, I've lived in the north all my life, so of course I'd be warm-blooded. That is, I think, why God put us on this earth. Is even if we had the worst life in the world and our life was nothing but suffering, even those tiniest moments of relief are eternity. Like, sure, maybe a person had such a miserable life that they had to live in a box, and that's tragic, and we should be doing all that we can to get those people out of those situations. But even they have had fleeting moments of joy. No matter how brief, they still existed. Sure, they might have gotten only 1 hour of sleep, but they got that sleep, and that sleep was able to help them escape into a world of dreams and escape from their life. And I think that's why they will really appreciate heaven, is that God will say, remember those fleeting moments on life? Now those will be the only thing about your life that you remember. You are a cold-blooded country boy. Oh dear. You would hate it where I'm from, because where I'm from, we still have to wear jackets. But I am technically also a country boy. I was born in the city, but now I live in the country. And man, does it feel like culture shock. The people here, not all of them, but most of the people here are so insanely friendly. And the kids are so insanely trusting. The amount of times I've had little girls, and obviously I won't name names, but the amount of times that I've had little girls that I'm just minding my own business at the lake, they will swim up to me and they'll say, "Hi, I'm 7, and you are like my absolute best friend, and let me show you how to swim." And one of them even grabbed my hand and she said, "Hey, I'm going to introduce you to my grandma." And the parents and the grandparents would have to apologize and say, "I hope my kid wasn't disturbing you." Like, you would never get that in the city. You would get the opposite approach where the kids would say, "That man exists and he's a man and he's terrible." But no, in the country, we're all equals, and that's what's great. When I go to the gym and I see women of any age, because technically at the gym that I go to, I think like the youngest you can be is 14. And then there's no age gap, or there's no age cap, I should say. Honestly, there's a part of me that stops thinking about all these barriers like gender and age and stuff like that. I just think we are here for the common purpose of fellowship and improving our bodies. And in that respect, I think that actually has helped me to make better friends is by having that mindset. Oh, thank you, Susie. I was hoping someone would say that. Oh, that makes my day. Thank you. Uh, You can blame the fact that you can you can blame the fact that people weren't showing up for the longest time. So I figured if people watched the replay, that they'd be able to hear all these perspectives on friendship and all that. Um, I was hoping that Comic Con people would show up, but either Ronnie didn't want to mention that, or maybe they've been lurkers, or what. But either way, at least you appreciate it, so that means a lot. Um, so, Susie, if you're willing to share, do you have any good news, any inspirational messages, anything that you want to talk about? If you want to talk about Myers Briggs, that is totally cool by me. But if you don't want to, that's cool by me as well. I am here for you guys, not you guys for me. So, if you're just like, you know what, Paul, I want to talk about grass, then we'll talk about grass. That is totally cool by me. As long as I know what you're talking about, let's go for it. Well, okay, maybe not porn, maybe not sex. Well, you can talk about things of a sexual nature, but like don't talk about your sex life. You guys know what I mean, but I have to cover my bases just in case. But I will say that I've really come to appreciate half of your friends are twice your age. That is interesting, JP. You know, when I was a teenager, that happened to me as well. I wouldn't say half of my friends were that, but I remember I went to a conference when I was in high school, and I was so miserable by the way that by the way that my youth group was teaching me that I hung out with the adults more than I hung out with the teenagers. I remember we had, I think it was 3 male chaperones, and 2 of them were the people that I would constantly seek out and want to, like, talk to. And I did talk to the adults quite a lot, when I was a teenager, and nowadays, that role has kinda reversed. You've been thinking a lot about introverted sensing. Got back from the gym and liked the idea of the shared goal of health. You know what? Honestly, I've been really thinking hard about health a lot as well. Like, I think I've always been a pretty healthy guy. There were definitely times in my life where I was like so dangerously underweight that um, my rib cage almost looked like I was growing breasts. But I have since gotten to a healthier um, build. Not like Captain America big, but my muscles are getting more of like, oh, okay, you actually have some arm muscle. But I'm not trying to do it to impress people. I'm trying to do it because I think it's really important to take care of the body, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. And I've gotten to the point in my life where I really value friends and family, especially my nieces and nephews have really gone through a really rough time in their lives, which I'm not allowed to talk about, but I want to go to the gym and work out for them, because I think if I were to die like tomorrow, That would probably ruin their lives. And if my life, well, I think my life has served a lot of purposes. But I think if there's any reason why I think God has kept me on this earth for as long as He has, it's because being an uncle is such a surreal feeling. Every single time we have a family get together and I hear those two precious words, Uncle Paul, it's so beautiful because I don't even know how to describe it. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be a dad. In fact, I don't even think I'm going to be a husband. But being an uncle is almost like the next best thing because I get along so well with my sisters in law. And sometimes my brothers and my sisters in law need a break. And so it's almost like being a part time dad. And it's like, you know what? I can handle this. This is good. Yes, it's very important to be healthy for the folks we care about. Yes, exactly. Because one of the things that I say the most to my family is there anything I can do for you? Whenever I'm at the gym, it's always, do you need help? How's your back feeling? I always want to be that guy that's just like Mr. Reliable, I guess you could say, which I've had people say to me, and that means a lot. Having nieces and nephews is amazing. Oh, I 100% agree. Um, I've gotten to the point where I think all of my nieces and nephews really like me now because there was a time where some of where some of them were a bit shy, but they've gotten to the point where they're starting to talk to me a bit more. You love your niece so much and was blessed with amazing aunts. Yeah, I don't talk to my aunts and uncles a whole lot, but I know that they really liked me a lot. So I think it would be great if I could see them again. It's just where I live, it's a far drive to go see them. And I am the type of guy that I am very soft spoken. I know you probably can't get that impression from this live stream because I got to make sure you guys can hear me. But I typically have such a soft voice that it's really hard for me to interject in conversations. So being around my aunts and uncles can be taxing because it tends to be loud and opinionated when they're there. And if you know anything about me, it's that I don't like the idea of absolutes. Technically, I'm a perceiving type because all the IJs and EPs are gather information first, then come to a conclusion. So you won't typically hear me saying stuff like, this is my favorite of all time, or this is never going to happen. You're typically going to get me saying stuff like, based on the current information that I've obtained, I don't foresee this being possible. Now, granted, my ability to think about the future is pretty much non existent unless if I am thinking about an agenda. So you're definitely not going to get me being able to be very good at answering questions like, where do you think you'll be in 10 years? Because I'm like, you got to Punch Out? Ooh, hope you have fun with that, JP. I also really like Punch Out. If that ever comes to the Switch, oh, that'll be great. Yeah, thanks for dropping by, JP. Glad you can make it. So, Susie, I wanted to ask you a question. Um, if you're an INFP, that would mean that your introverted sensing is in the tertiary, which, if it's anything like my introverted feeling, is actually quite strong. But when you're around people, they're surprised that you have it at all because, like, the dominant and the secondary just completely take over. Is that just a me thing? Is that just when I'm around ENFPs? Or, like, can you relate to that where you're just like, hey, you know what? I actually do reminisce every now and then, and I do like bodily comfort. It's just that most people don't notice that about me because I'm too busy being imaginative and being authentic. Like, is that just me making stuff up? Is that just my personal experience, or can you relate? That's what I want to ask you, especially the extroverted thinking. Like, I am just such an info dumper that I have a hard time believing that the FP types would like want to keep their thoughts to themselves. That at least that's what I've heard inferior introverted extroverted thinking is just this fear of just like saying whatever's on your mind. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I've heard from Mongolian Mindsets channel. But as far as my function stack, I've definitely been mistaken. I think extroverts and feeling types are what I've been mistaken as the most. I've actually kept track of every single type I've ever been mistyped as, and there's only two that no one has ever mistaken me as, and that's an ISTP and an ENTP. And if I had to guess why, I made a whole video about it, so you can watch that if you want like my full analysis. I think it's just that I have a very antagonistic approach to introverted thinking. I'm usually the first person that'll like upset all the TP types because I'll be like, don't just make up logic and make your reasoning subjective. Give me the facts. Introverted feeling is really private. Interesting. I remember. Wait, wait. No, I remember that. I remember I watched a video on Mongolian mindset where they said that like INFPs have this unfortunate stereotype of being crybabies, but he has since taught me that that's more of an ENFP thing to do. INFPs actually don't like to talk about their feelings all that much unless they're challenged. Then they get all Attila the Hun and start yelling at you because then their extroverted thinking takes over. But in general, in everyday conversations, you're not going to hear them talking about their grandma dying just out of the blue. They'll want to keep it to themselves. But then you got idiots like me where a new game comes out and I'm just like, I'm going to talk about it. I don't care if I don't have to upload for another week. I'm going to upload the next day because I can't shut up about this. So I would imagine if you're anything like me, then your extroverted intuition is more of you can't shut up about ideas that you have. And from what I've heard from other FP types, usually how their extroverted perceiving function comes out is it's a supplement to their introverted feeling. So, for example, um, you get a lot of singers who are IFPs. And depending on whether they're an ISFP or an INFP, they might have either creative lyrics as a way of like expressing them without outright saying it. Or if they're the ISFP, they might say, I don't know, like take a job that like allows them to engage their senses, but like it's also engaging their emotions. Which to me, I find that surprisingly relatable, but not for introverted feeling. Because every job I've ever taken has been a step by step procedural job. Because I want it to serve my introverted sensing. I want to be able to have a job that's easy to understand. And it's a job that doesn't require a whole lot of guesswork or spontaneity. Because man, do I hate surprises. And they say every IJ is terrible with surprises, so I'm not surprised. You tend to do a lot of listening, pretty stoic, takes a lot to get you expressive in a negative way. Love to sing, paint, write, etc. Yeah, that's pretty consistent with what I've heard from INFPs. Being stoic, though, that I have not heard about INFPs. But again, maybe I'm just thinking of the way they're portrayed in media more than how they actually are. Because, like I said, I'm pretty sure it's the ENFPs that are the ones that are constantly regurgitating their emotions and saying things like all those Facebook posts where they're complaining about how unfair their lives are. To be fair, I used to do that to an extent, but it would only be on Facebook. Um, I would say my extroverted thinking is strong in the sense that, like, whenever something is in my mind, I say it, no matter what. I've learned to be more diplomatic with how I say it and when I say it, but boy, am I not going to shut up forever. I am never just going to think about something and then say, well, let me just let it remain in my thoughts. No, that's why I have this YouTube channel is when I review a video game, I have a lot of thoughts about it and I do not want to keep it to myself. I want every single person in the world to know what I think about that video game. And so that's why I make my reviews. Even if my reviews get double digit views, I'm like, I don't care. I got to talk about this. And I can't do it in a journal. Journaling is a nightmare for me because I can't stand having my thoughts appear in a way that no one else will get to view. Because journals are supposed to be private. And I'm like, no, it's extroverted feeling. I want to engage it with other people. And that's why I love reading the comments section whenever I go into like YouTube videos, because I want to know other people's thoughts. Not only do I want to express mine, but I want to hear other people's thoughts as well. But the way that I've heard extroverted thinking described in the broad sense, and you'll have to see if you agree with me here, is empathy to other thoughts, but depending on where it is in the stack, the source of the thoughts is going to be different. So, like ESTJs and ENTJs will go to like the highest experts. ISTJs and INTJs might go to like a book. Um, ENFPs and ENTPs might go to like a Twitter post. And INFPs and ISFPs might go to like a comic book or a movie that they watched. And that's why they take everything personally, is because their extroverted thinking is being empathetic to other people's thoughts. So they're saying, this person made a post about me that's negative on Twitter. Instead of using critical thinking, which is introverted thinking, I am just going to take it in with no filter and say, oh my gosh, that's offensive. Which, again, having introverted feeling in the third, I can somewhat relate. But because my introverted thinking is in the sixth, and therefore sometimes it comes across as though it's in the second, I can actually use critical thinking to an insult and say things like, yeah, you're just being a bully right now, and so let me ascertain what all the books have taught me about how to deal with bullies. So as a result, I tend to really annoy other thinking types. I should say other extroverted thinking types, especially like the ESTJs. Like they can't stand me because I tend to be like this information sponge where like I take in information and then I can recall it at a moment's notice. And and I'm curious, Susie, like does that work for you but to a lesser degree because you have introverted sensing in the child? Cuz like for example, if say I'm in the car with someone and I don't know, there's a driver that cuts them off. I will just say, I think like the most I'll say is just like, people nowadays. Whereas like the other people will get all riled up and they'll start like yelling and hollering and saying, what the heck, you idiot? And my response will be, well, wait a minute. Didn't you read the driver's ed manual? It said that you raging at that is considered a form of road rage. So not only are you disobeying the rules that you supposedly have memorized because you have a license, but it's pointless because that glass is so thick that they're not going to hear you through that glass. And then they're like, Paul, don't you get it? People can't just keep their emotions to themselves. They got to express it. And I'm like, that's not how I work. Like, I express my thoughts all the time, but my emotions tend to be more, except for excitement. Excitement, I have no filter for my excitement. But, like, I remember when my grandma died just a couple of weeks ago, my mom had this, like, look of extreme sorrow on her face. What did I do? I said, oh, okay, and left it at that. It wasn't because I wasn't sad. I mean, I wasn't sad. I was happy because as a Catholic, I believed that, she received anointing of the sick and she was in heaven, if anything, I was overjoyed. I was like, okay, so she's no longer suffering. She's with all of her relatives that died before her. And now she's closer to me than she's ever been. So now we have an even better relationship. What's there to be sad about? But that's, I think, also child introverted feeling talking is it doesn't consider how everyone else is feeling about it. So it ends up coming across as like my feelings are the superior feelings and yours are unimportant because they're not mine. Which guilty as charged. I've definitely been like that when I was a kid. But as I've gotten older, I've learned that there's value in hearing people out, that other people can have valid opinions and they can have valid feelings. And it's good to take into account that I don't have all of the information. I may have read more books than them, but they might have different perspectives than me. So who knows? Maybe all my books that I read about anger management are a bunch of baloney. Maybe they've read better books. But I will say, though, I think you'll find it hard pressed to find someone who, at least of the extroverted thinking types, who is more um, reserved when it comes to like expressing an extreme emotion than me. Because the last time that I like hollered at someone where I was just like yelling and screaming was in 2017. So it takes a lot to get me annoyed, like a lot. Well, I should say get me annoyed to the point of outwardly expressing it. Like, it's very easy to get me annoyed. Very easy to get me just like, "Oh my gosh, you are such an idiot." But to actually get me to like shout at people, very hard to do. So my water, since you can't see it, I'll have to give some other kind of measurement. I would say my water is slightly lower than my pinky. And since I have small-ish size by guy standards, I'd probably say um, probably the size of an average adult woman's pinky is how much water I have left. And when that runs out, I'm done. You're likely to listen by default, but will apply a value filter if they're a strong value class. Okay. With written info, you take. Oh, okay. I see. So it's like me with new ideas, where I can't just accept something that's new on the spot. I have to be given time to say, like, okay, will I still be comfortable with this new thing? It could be food, it could be even just a concept. Like, the idea that I was wrong about modesty was actually a very simple process. Someone just said, Paul, you're misquoting the catechism. And they said, here's what the catechism actually teaches. And I said, oh, I guess you're right. Actually, that's a bad example because that's more of extroverted thinking being so high. I guess, like, if a person wanted me to go against my routine without some kind of external source, I would have a hard time just taking them at face value. Like if someone said to me, "Hey, Paul, I was wondering if you could go to this restaurant." And I'd be like, "Oh, well, what's in the restaurant?" And they'd say like, "Oh, a bunch of foreign food." I'd be like, "Wait, what? Why not just a cheeseburger and fries?" They're like, "Who wants just a cheeseburger and fries? Experiment a bit." Hello, Lodo. Glad you can make it in. Um, I'm actually running a little bit later than usual. So, I told Susie earlier, you know me, my water is my life energy source. It's about as tall as a grown woman's pinky, because again, my webcam's not working for some reason. But before I go, which again, until my water runs out, any good news lately? I ask that all the time. You should be used to it by now. And I'm really glad that you commented on my Comic Con video because I really just, like I was just telling Susie a couple of minutes ago, I am a thought vomiter. If I have something on my mind, I gotta say it. And if that means, oh, these are good comic book or these are good Comic Con costumes, it means take a picture and then show everyone. So me making that video was me telling the whole world that I thought those costumes were amazing. Not much. It's been a busy week. You got Rosette. Oh my gosh, that's great. Did you get the CDI replica controller as well? If you did, you are officially more of a masochist than I am. Happy Thursday. Okay, so I'm just curious, is there like something special about Thursdays, or did you just choose to say Happy Thursday because today happens to be a Thursday? Because I am very behind when it comes to social customs. Like, I tend to always forget about things like Mother's Day and Veterans Day. And Susie, you might be thinking, what? An SJ that doesn't like traditions? But that's what I think the typology community got wrong. And that's that SJs don't follow traditions, they create them for themselves. And then they follow their own traditions. So for me, I don't give a darn about societal holidays if they get in the way of my traditions. It's the ESTJs that are be like, you gotta do tradition. Friday Jr. Huh, good one, Lodo. Speaking of which, Lodo, I wanted to ask you, how did my guide to 999 treat you? Was it easy enough to understand? Were you able to like get the appropriate endings? Did I make it clear enough that you had to get the safe ending before you got the true ending? Like, I need some feedback. And don't spoil anything about the game. Just give me a general like it worked or it didn't work. Because if it didn't work, then I'm going to have to make some major adjustments to the ones for Virtue Zest Reward and Zero Time Dilemma. But yeah, like I'm always behind on like what's considered cool and what's considered like societally appropriate. I tend to like I said, I make my own traditions. Oh, good. So glad to hear that, Lodo. Oh, that makes my day. You're actually only the second person ever who has wanted a choice walkthrough from me. And it just makes my day because I tried so hard to be the world's biggest Zero Escape fan. And someone who validates that is just so wonderful. Oh, that means so much to me. And like I said, I will send you Virtues as Rewards walkthrough. I also finished Zero Time Dilemmas after I sent that email to you. I'll send that to you after you beat 999 because again, even just giving the hints has a couple of spoilers. And 999 is the type of game that you really want to know as little as possible when it comes to the story. And again, when you get to both of the endings at a nice pace, very nice, very nice. Did you forget to send me that picture of the me on your island, or were you honestly, if you were to tell me, Paul, I'm enjoying 999 so much that it slipped my mind, I'd say, good. I would rather you play 999 than send me that picture. So do not feel embarrassed in the slightest if that's the case. Because I remember when Zero Time Dilemma first came out, I pre ordered it and I beat it in only 2 days because I was just so hooked on it. And mind you, I played it improperly because the game has just this really weird choice that registers completely differently than anything else, which was why I over explained it in the guide that I'm going to send you. As a result, I got the true ending before I got another super essential ending. And boy, do I regret it. So I'm hoping to save people from my fate. And that's essentially what was the origin of why I wrote those guides. Is I played Zero Time Dilemma in the completely wrong order. Oh, okay, gotcha. You know what? I have a flip phone right here. I do technically have a smartphone, but I only use it for like taking pictures, taking videos, and Nintendo Music. Apart from that, I use my flip phone for everything, and my flip phone is terrible at taking pictures. Hmm. All right, guys, my water just ran out, so I think I'm gonna call it here. Um, I also need to eat dinner, so but I did go longer than usual, so I'll give myself that much. So let's before I go, I want to ask, was there any last words you guys wanted to say? Like any last like big announcement or big like thought that you wanted to give? Just now's the time to do it. But while I'm waiting for you guys to type, thank you for coming in, Lodo. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, John Paul. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, Ronnie. So glad that all. Oh, and Noah. Almost forgot Noah. Thank you, Noah. You guys, I'm glad that you all were able to join me on my very technically stupid webcam troubles. Thank you, Susie. I'm glad you appreciated it. Hope you guys enjoy the replay because boy, did I have a lot to say about the nature of friendships. And you all have a great rest of your day. And remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye.